Hey photo friends, thanks for coming back. Super pumped to talk about my camera today. The camera that I want to talk about is my Fuji X100. So this is the original camera in the Fuji X100 lineup that was announced in 2010. I got mine probably, I'm gonna say 2014, bought it used. Didn't have much of an idea of what it was, but did a lot of research up front, looking at the Fuji line of more compact cameras, and ultimately landed on the X100. And boy, am I excited and stoked that I did that. Because what this camera gives me relative to most of my other digital cameras is a true 35mm analog experience while shooting really beautiful digital images, thanks to a number of things about this camera. But let's talk about what I'm really so fond of when it comes to this particular piece of equipment. The basic build of the camera is great, very point and shoot-esque, and definitely rangefinder-ish, which this camera I would put into that category. It's a rangefinder camera. It has a hybrid viewfinder, meaning that you can use it in EVF mode, or you can use it in a more traditional rangefinder mode where you're looking through the camera body itself, and there's a really lovely little kind of frosted white overlay on top of that viewfinder that gives us critical information around taking our photos. So our shutter speed is seen, our aperture is seen, our ISO is seen. There's a small light meter which is giving us and metering the scene out in front of us so that we're using their aperture, the ISO, and the shutter speed to correctly expose for our scene. We are using mechanical dials. I use mechanical dials, and I use all of the mechanical dials on this. So there's a shutter speed dial on the top, which when manipulated is affecting my shutter speed. At the base of the fixed 35mm equivalent lens is an aperture ring, which is able to be manipulated and toggles through f2 all the way up to f16. The exposure compensation dial is also micromanaging our exposure, and it's a manual dial again on the top of the camera. So using the standard rangefinder build through the viewfinder, using the mechanical components of the camera, what I'm doing is having a very 35mm film experience akin to the Voigtlander Bessa R that I shoot with the Scope R Color 35 paired with that. So mechanical shutter speed wheel on the top, aperture ring on the lens itself. ISO is fixed because I'm shooting film, but you get the idea. The images that I achieve with this camera are going to be primarily attributed to our lens. So this is the original build of this lens, which has now been evolved. Okay, so as of the X100V, which I do have and shoot with actively, that camera was the first camera to see an evolution in the lens build in this lineup. This lens has been the build through every X100 iteration up to the V or the 5, whatever. So I love this lens. It's real soft, wide open. I mean, real soft. It's soft, wide open. I don't particularly, myself as a photographer, I'm not concerned with tack sharp in creating my own personal work, which is a big part of what I make because it's important to me to make that work. So as we stop down, we're going to start to see more sharpness in our images, but I don't care about that necessarily. What I'm searching for when I'm creating images is a feeling, and this lens gives me a lot of that. So it's a 35mm fixed lens on the front of the body itself. You cannot remove this lens. It's a fixed lens camera, okay? And the lens really, wow, thanks friend. I love you so much. You do such a great job. The sensor is an APS-C 12 point something megapixel built into the camera, which is also another piece of the puzzle when we're talking about image rendering, right? And there are also then some Fuji film simulations built into the camera. I tend to rock the Ostia Soft. It's really nice. I really love the way that that helps render images in this very dreamy way that I'm really kind of creating with this particular camera, and the lens with the Ostia Soft paired with it is really great. You don't have to use these simulations. I like to use them. And what this does for me is this gives me images that I just do such a small amount of post work on. I love the way that they come straight out of camera. And if I'm doing anything, it's just so minor before I share them or I feel satisfied with my images. Overall, mechanically, the camera has a rear build of the camera, which has a fixed screen on that with a few command dials and buttons. Everything has a place and a space. I'm not overwhelmed with buttons, but again, I'm really not. The only thing I have paired up, I think, to a function button right now is a hot button for ISO, so I can toggle through that pretty quickly, and then actuating or activating the 3-stop ND filter, which is built into the camera, which is also super clutch. PS, it's really amazing because with a maximum shutter speed of 2000 to 4000, in certain lighting situations, I need to shave off some of that light to shoot with a more wide open aperture, and that ND filter really is helpful in that situation. So amazing and good job there. On the side of the camera, so all those buttons have a space and a place, as I was saying, but again, the way that I really interface with the camera, I've got digits on the top manipulating my shutter, and then I've got my digits on the lens manipulating my aperture, and those are the things I'm touching on the camera when I'm having experience shooting with it. On the side here, we've got a manual toggle for our focus modes. We've got a continuous and a single and a manual. I could manipulate a ring. It's not really manual. It's this other way that it focuses, and sometimes I use it, but more often than not, I have a point set in the center. I leave this switch on the single focus mode. I acquire focus by putting my subject in the center of the frame, focus acquisition, and then recomposing. So again, kind of the way that I tend to interface with most of my 35mm film cameras. Yeah, just such a revolutionary piece of equipment that has such a lineage at this point, and has such high-tech pieces of equipment on the far end that the most new iteration, the X100 6 or VI, is really, wow, just such a technologically advanced tool, but kind of just keeping the aesthetic and the build of this original X100. So for me, this camera is not a camera that I shoot with all the time. It's something that I pick up when I want that feeling and experience again, but I want to shoot some digital instead of shooting 35mm film, and I want an experience that really is akin to that and makes me slow down and be intentional. So if people are looking for a digital camera that they can really fall in love with and will allow them a truly analog experience with a digital tool that is not perfect but is very feeling rooted, get one of these X100s. You will not be disappointed, in my opinion. You know, you have to be that person. You have to have patience. You have to be willing to work with intention. You have to have a connection to your craft that really is about that feeling and that emotion, I guess, maybe without getting like insanely cheesy. So that's my X100. It's my crush. It's the fine picks. It's a Fuji. It's amazing. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Hope everybody has just such a great one, and I'll catch up with everybody soon. Peace out.